Welcome to another product knowledge video, aircraft hull and liability. Very, very interesting to everyone. If you have them and own them and travel them, it's interesting to all of us. Today, I'm going to, let me introduce Arlington Rowe. Their aviation provides insurance coverages and expertise to independent insurance agents and their clients. And we're going to discuss with Jim Rowe, who's the president of Arlington Rowe Aviation, and aircraft hull and liability insurance. Jim, thanks for helping us on this. It's going to help policyholders. It's going to help potential policyholders. They'll better understand the risks and exposures of aviation insurance for sure.
George, it's a pleasure to be with you, and I am blessed and honored to have such caring and knowledgeable professionals in our firm. Anytime we have an opportunity to help someone make an informed decision, we'll do the best job we possibly can.
Well, I never doubted that in the least. So let's get started. Let's start at the beginning. What is the purpose of aircraft hull and liability?
Well, basically, George, the policy insures against liability and physical damage pertaining to the aircraft hull that can be caused in the air or on the ground from things like weather incidents, wind, hail. That could include taxiing or being in the air, prop strikes, even hard landings or crashes. The liability portion of the policy technically provides coverage for the aircraft owner's legal liability resulting from third-party bodily injury and property damage as a result of the ownership, maintenance, or use of the aircraft. For most aircraft owners, their liability extends to protect not only themselves, but also employee pilots, or other employees for that matter, passengers, and anyone using or riding in the aircraft with the permission of the owner.
Well, let's talk about passengers in a minute here. What's that about?
Well, there's no doubt, George, that passengers are the biggest exposure for any aircraft owner. In the event of an accident, the likelihood of injury or death is high. The majority of aircraft policies do extend the liability coverage, or at least a portion of it, so it covers bodily injury to passengers. On the screen, George, you should be seeing a picture of my family.
I do.
And we often consider flying separately because, of course, we're a family, but also because we all work in our family business, and risk management would tell you that if we have a responsibility to 180 employees like we do, we probably should be flying in separate aircraft.
I'll be darned. You seldom hear that anymore these days. I remember earlier on that did, but that's interesting that you would do this. Well, who needs this policy? That's what I want to know.
Well, anyone who owns or operates an aircraft for business or pleasure, rentals, charter, whatever it might be, certainly needs coverage. But George, it is important to note that the term aircraft isn't limited to fixed wing aircraft. It's not limited to those that fly as well. There are turboprop planes, there are jets, crop dusters, seaplanes, even helicopters that are airborne, parked, or stored. They all are at risk. I'm personally intrigued with the rapidly evolving and innovative industry of UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, better known as drones. Of course, that's all over the papers and the media, and we're watching the innovative uses and applications of drones. It's an emerging market, an opportunity, and certainly a challenge for aviation insurance because we don't have a history to rely on.
No, it's a fascinating business. I read in the paper today that there are more drones than there are airplanes all of a sudden. Holy mackerel, it's just gotten so wild. Well, I think this insurance, particularly of aircraft, is fascinating. It exposes us to what's happening in the world, and that's a good thing. So if we needed coverage, what are the factors considered when your insurance companies or you're representing evaluate a particular risk?
Well, all insurance companies do things a little bit differently, but there are four primary factors that an insurance company is likely to consider when rating or evaluating these kind of exposures. The aircraft itself, meaning the specifics of that aircraft, the year manufactured, the make, the model, number of seats, that's one of the key considerations. The pilot is critical, obviously, to any operation. their license, their ratings, their flight experience. They have to go through an annual checkup and health to make sure they're a healthy pilot.
Right.
The limits requested, both as respects the hull itself, including the market value, and any improvements or upgrades like additional avionics or instruments, as well as the limit of liability that's requested by the aircraft owner. And finally, the use, whether it's for business or personal or charter or whatever else. There is a broad range of potential uses for an aircraft, and each carries its own specific set of risk factors to be considered and evaluated. Insurance companies employ highly skilled underwriting professionals. Most of our underwriters, by the way, are pilots themselves, so they know the exposures and the risks that they're looking at. So we at Arlington Rowe strongly recommend that an aircraft owner seek the guidance of an experienced insurance professional who can help them understand their exposures and provide coverage to protect their assets.
Well, there's so many aviation risks, such a variety of them. How do you determine the cost? That's what I want to know.
Well, the cost is based on all those exposures and rating factors that I talked about previously. It requires a complete understanding of the exposures. Passengers will always be the biggest exposure, and deductibles are small and often non-existent. In aircraft insurance, deductibles and rates are not calculated on frequency of loss like automobile insurance, for instance, but rather on severity of loss, which is the prevalent factor with aircraft risks. George, I think this would be a good time to mention, by the way, that bodily injury to employees on board an aircraft traveling as part of their job duties, and it's not covered by the aircraft hull and liability policy. In the event of a loss, the workers' compensation policy would come into play.
Oh, okay. All right. If you had to give, or if you could give some general advice about aviation insurance in general, what would you say?
Well, aviation policies themselves are really an uncontrolled line of insurance like marine. So based on that, companies all have their own policy forms. There's certainly standard kinds of language that they all tend to use, but all aviation policies are unique, and that makes them very complicated in many cases. The terms and conditions are critical to understand them. So don't assume something or someone is covered. Ask your agent, read your insurance policy, and I'll give you an example. A mechanic works on your plane and knows your plane inside and out, works on it all the time. Can the mechanic take your plane up and test it? Well, sure, he or she can, but they will not be covered under your policy. A plane is not like a car where you can give it to anyone with a license to drive. It is best to be overly cautious in your decisions, be certain of what is and what is not covered.
Well, Jim, thank you for visiting with me today. This is obviously a highly specialized field of insurance, and I really appreciate your insights. It's been interesting. It's short, sweet, to the point. We can't take any more time, but you went right to the heart of the matter.
Well, George, we've been doing this since 1991 when we started our aviation practice, and Travis French is our aviation practice leader. He leads a team of professionals who have extensive experience and expertise and a genuine love and fascination for the aviation industry. We all thank you, by the way, for letting us share this brief overview of this important insurance coverage to help people really understand what it is they need and what it is they're buying.
Well, I sure understand it a lot better, and I'm sure that people will. Thanks very much for being with us. And for those of you looking and listening to this short video, remember, now it's just an overview. It's not intended to list any or all of the coverages that are really covered or not. So your agent's got to review your needs and decide with you which of those coverages or more should be included to fit your specific needs. So thanks very much for visiting the Product Knowledge video, and we'll see you again soon.